Let me get to my number 5. And I wonder if Kenny is going to have him on this list because Kenny habitually does not like this guy as a fantasy player. It's Adam Thielen. His ADP is 305. I think that's way too early. Like you can get Mike Evans in that range like that. So I think that's like Adam Thielen doesn't belong there, especially in standard. Like maybe PPR, you can maybe argue it a little bit, and I still wouldn't. So Adam Thielen, when this season's off season started, I was hoping that he would be mentioned as someone who would move into the slot. But then the Vikings drafted Justin Jefferson, and Jefferson's going to be in the slot. He's another guy, another maybe honorable mention I could have mentioned as a sleeper. But Adam Thielen's going to be on the outside, and Kirk Cousins likes throwing to the slot more. So I think Thielen's going 2 rounds too early. I'd be fine with him in the 5th round, but definitely not in the 3rd.
Adam Thielen's not on my radar as a bust. I don't mind them where he's being drafted. There's just a whole crew of dudes in that area. Like to me, there's just this whole crew of receivers that are being drafted kind of rounds 3 to 6. So many of them are interchangeable. So Adam Thielen, I think I don't think is a terrible spot there. I've actually kind of warmed up a little bit, kind of watching 2019 a little more. I've been down on him a lot the last couple of years. He's actually shown me a little more this past year, particularly once Diggs went down. He really kind of did some things for that team. So my hate for him has softened. I'm getting too soft in my old age, I guess. I don't know. I will just kind of, you mentioned DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not nervous about the whole scrambling thing. To me, I look at it like, well, if Kyler Murray scrambles a lot, maybe that'll just be more first downs, which means more prolonged drives, which means more chances for touchdowns for DeAndre Hopkins. Like I think you can use the same argument in favor of Hopkins. So to me, it's Michael Thomas and Tyreek Hill at the top, and there is a distance between the next guys. And I'm not likely to draft the receiver in the first 2 rounds other than those 2 guys anyway. So we probably end up agreeing generally. But if I end up with if every running back if I'm at the bottom of the 2nd round and every running back I like is gone, I feel I trust Hopkins. I actually have as my number 3 receiver. I trust Hopkins just fine. And there's a whole bunch of receivers in that crew that I'm like, I don't know if I trust. So you're right. I think Hopkins takes a step backwards from where he was in Houston, but I still wouldn't bother me to take him as my wide receiver 1 early in the draft. If all the running backs I loved are gone at that point, which there will likely be at least one guy I like. So I probably end up not drafting a receiver anyway. So I think functionally we end up agreeing. But I think, so here's my number 5, my number 5 bust. Let me, sorry, I was looking at my notes and I got confused. I confused myself because I can't read my own handwriting sometimes. It's the nature of the. Okay, my number 5 bust is I mentioned it earlier. It's kind of a collection of players. It's Daniel Jones and the New York Giants offense altogether. I think except Saquon Barkley. I have seen lots of people talk about it. You guys have talked about Daniel Jones taking a step forward. I was kind of convinced on it early in the year, and as I've rewatched 2019, I am no longer convinced. There are moments where Daniel Jones looks fantastic, where he makes all the throws. But there are too many times in games, at least 5 or 6 times in a game, where he makes the read that is just clearly the wrong read, where it's like, that was a really bad decision. Ooh, and like just terrible decisions. I'm not convinced. He has creeped up into the 8th round. Darius Slayton is now creeping up into the 8th round. Evan Ingram is creeping like upper 7th, like the beginning of the 7th round. And it just feels like that entire passing game is starting to creep upwards in people's minds. And I would caution people. I think the hype train can easily get there. I could foresee people trying to reach for those guys. Darius Slayton, he's really good. Got good hands, good long speed, but he's not a good route. He's very sloppy on the route running. And there were at least 2 interceptions in mine, or 2 plays that Daniel Jones kind of looked like he threw bad passes. It was Slayton's fault. So it felt like they weren't always on the same page. And so that could certainly change. Daniel Jones could be, he's a rookie. He could make a huge step forward. Lots of rookies do that. But what I've rewatched, I feel my confidence in him and the passing offense of this team is significantly less than it was 2 months ago. So I will probably not own any Giants.
Interesting. I can't say I agree with that, but that's the beauty of this. We don't have to agree. We can just see who's right in a few months. My 5th, my number 5 bust is going to be AJ Green. I drafted him in the 6th round last year, so I hold a little bit of resentment for the fact that he didn't play, and it was mostly my fault for not reading into it. But the logic behind it is He's been injured so much the past couple of years. He's older. It's a foot injury. Those injuries tend to linger at this point. I like him better with Joe Burrow, but I also think Joe Burrow is going to take some time to adjust to the NFL level. And I think he might have to spread the ball around a little bit. And he likes throwing in the slots, so I think that's a bigger plus for Tyler Boyd than Green. I think Green's already been banged up at camp a little bit. So there's just a lot of little factors that make me worried about AJ Green. Now, if he was available in the 8th round, I would definitely take a chance on him. But I think he's going around that 6th round range a bit. And, the possibility exists that he ends up being okay and is a, fine wide receiver too and does really well. But I'm just not willing to take that risk again. There are just too many things that are troubling to me about Green for this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's boom or bust. Like, he's either going to be great or he's not going to play at all. So yeah, I could see that. My number 4 is Cooper Kupp. I think people remember how great Cooper Kupp was, or at least how great his stats were a couple years ago when the Rams offense was running like so well. The first year with Sean McVay there, they reached the playoffs, and then the second year they went to the Super Bowl. Cooper Kupp was excellent in fantasy that year, those 2 years. And then he kind of fell off after that. And I think part of the reason why is the offensive line has really declined, and Jarod Goff, as a result, has regressed as well. And also Jarod Goff has been targeting Robert Woods a lot more. It seemed like last year Jarod Goff just preferred to throw to Robert Woods more. You can argue whether or not Cooper Kupp is more talented than Robert Woods or not. That's certainly a discussion that can be had, but I don't think you can argue that it seemed like Jarod Goff liked throwing to Robert Woods more than Cooper Kupp. Like, that was definitely apparent last year. And yet Cooper Kupp is being drafted earlier than Robert Woods. Kupp's ADP is 310. Again, Mike Evans is a 3rd round pick in fantasy. You have DK Metcalf, who is like immensely more upside than Cooper Kupp. Like, guys like that are being drafted in the 3rd round. I'd much prefer them to Cooper Kupp. So he is my number 4 bust.
Where is Cooper Kupp's ADP? And I don't know. He wasn't on my list of.
It's 310.
310. Yeah, I think it's fine. I'm rewatching the 2019 season. He clearly, when they went to 2 tight end sets, and they basically went to all 2 tight end sets in December. They completely transformed from being what they had been under Sean McVay for the first couple of years there. They were a completely different team in the last 6 weeks of the season. And when they were going to 2 tight end sets, or Cooper Kupp was not on the field most of those times. He was the guy coming off the field. And so, but when it comes to talent-wise, like, he's not taking a step backwards. So to me, I don't know what to make of that offense. I'm not sure what to do with that team. So it's hard for me to say, yeah, that team is good or bad, largely because I don't know what to make of that team, which leads me to my number 4 bust. It's actually I got a 2-way tie for 2 tight ends. I've got Jared Cook and Tyler Higbee as my bust, tied for number 4 for kind of the similar reasons. They are both guys that the numbers look really good in the second half of the year last year. The system is systems that people seem to trust, but they don't have the talent to really sustain that going forward. So for kind of the same reason, I think Tyler Higbee is kind of being drafted like late 8th, early 9th. Jared Cook's being drafted like late 7th, early 8th round, depending on what site you look at. Both of those guys are being drafted ahead of primarily Dallas Goedert, obviously being the main guy I've already talked about. But Austin Hooper, Noah Fant are being drafted late. TJ Hawkinson being drafted late. There are several other tight ends that I like more. And so anyone drafting a tight end before round 10, like, unless it's one of the elite guys, it doesn't make sense to me. To me, it's good. You're going to bust. You're much better if you're going to draft one of the single positions in between quarterback and tight end in that spot. Take a quarterback. If you're going to draft, one of those guys in round, 8 to 10, a tight end's not what you want there. I think it's a total bust. Tyler Higbee being drafted way too high. He was 9th best tight end last year on 89 targets, which is only 57%, which is a 50% share of his team. I can't imagine that's going to get repeat. Like, I look at the Rams. Does Sean McVay really want to be a slow-paced 2 tight end team? Like, does he really want to be that? I don't think any of us think Sean McVay wants to be that guy. And so not only do I not think he's going to be on the field as much, I'm not even sure Tyler Higbee's the best tight end on that team. I think Gerald Everett might be actually better. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm not even sure Tyler Higbee's that good. So I'm generally out on the Rams offense altogether because I just think they were dysfunctional. That offensive line was a total disaster last year. I don't know what the running game is going to be like, but I see a lot of people drafting Tyler Higbee as like they say, yeah, I'm going to wait on tight end, and then Tyler Higbee's the guy. Like that seems like odd. So or Jared Cook, really, literally Jared Cook I don't think he could outrun Jacob or me in a race. So I mean, I don't know how fast you are, Jacob, but I don't know that Jared Cook's the guy. So I think it's really odd that people are waiting on tight end. Well done. And then they're going to put their stock in Jared Cook and Tyler Higbee. I just think it's odd.
I am deceptively fast, but I have no stamina. Like my top tier sprint speed when I was younger, people would be like, wow, you run faster than I thought you would. But yeah, no, I have no stamina. So I could run him maybe once, but not twice. Totally agree to your point on Cook. I'm a little higher on Higbee than you, but generally I feel the same way about the Rams offense. I just don't like their offensive line at all. I think they're in for maybe another big regression if Andrew Whitworth can't continue to play well. But my number 4 guy is a quarterback. It's Dak Prescott. Look, Dak Prescott's good. He's good in fantasy formats, but he's just going too early. Like every time we do a mock draft, he goes like in the 6th round when there are other receivers or running backs you could add. And Dak Prescott just doesn't move the needle for me. I would so much rather have Aaron Rodgers in the 10th round. Carson Wentz has been going in that same range. It doesn't make sense to me for Dak Prescott to be going that high. I know he has a lot of good weapons around him, but he also has Ezekiel Elliott there to take some rushing touchdowns away. And, I think all of us will acknowledge if they get down the red zone, the first option is going to be running with Elliott. They still have a good offensive line, even without Travis Frederick. I have it ranked, I think, as the 4th unit in the NFL. It's the first time they haven't been the number 1 unit in the last 3 years in my rankings, but they're still going to be really good. So I just don't trust Prescott to have enough production over those other guys going below him that it warrants picking him that early. I think that's my qualm with him. If you want him as your fantasy quarterback, that's fine. I just wouldn't select him too early. I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, I think selecting any quarterback too early is a big mistake. Unless like Patrick Mahomes falls to you at the end of the 3rd round or something like that, then I would consider it for sure. But we've seen Prescott go way too early, and it's not really a surprise. So after the Cowboys drafted CeeDee Lamb, Steve Smith on NFL Network said this is going to be like the '90s Cowboys, and I definitely can't see that at all.